Welcome back, everybody, to another issue of the Old Covenant-abridged. I'm just some guy from Utah, and today we're going to be reading this week's Genesis 18 through 23. God will provide himself a lamb. And the Lord appeared to Abraham in the plains of Mamre, as he sat in his tent door in the heat of the day. Lifting his eyes, he saw 3 men standing by him and ran to meet them, bowing himself to the ground. As they ate under the tree, one blessed Abraham and declared that Sarah, his wife, should have a son. Now Sarah, hearing this from the tent door, laughed within herself, for she was old. But the angel of the Lord rebuked her, saying, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" And confirmed that at the time appointed she would indeed bear a son. And as the men rose up to look toward Sodom, the angel of the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which the Lord will do for him?" The angel revealed that because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah was great and their sin very grievous, the Lord would destroy them. Now the holy men turned their faces toward Sodom to reward them for their iniquities. But Abraham stood yet before the Lord, remembering the things which had been told to him. Abraham drew near and pleaded with the Lord, asking, "Will you destroy the righteous with the wicked? Shall not the judge of all the earth do right?" And he began to intercede, asking if the Lord would spare the place for 50. The Lord agreed, and Abraham continued to plead, lowering the number from 45 to 40 to 30 to 20, and finally to 10. And the Lord said, "I will not destroy them for 10's sake." As soon as Abraham left communing with the Lord, Abraham went his way, and returned to his tent. Now Lot bowed himself toward the ground, pressing them to abide in his house. But the men of Sodom, both old and young, encompassed the house, demanding to know the visitors. Lot went out and pleaded with his brother not to do so wickedly. He refused to bring his daughters out, testifying that God would not justify such a sin. And the holy men pulled Lot inside and smote the crowd with blindness, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. The angels commanded Lot to gather his family, for the cry of the city's abominations had come up before the Lord. Lot warned his sons-in-law, but he seemed as one that mocked. Thus, when morning came, the angels mercifully laid hold upon the hands of Lot, his wife, and his 2 daughters, setting them outside the city. Lot pleaded to flee to the small city of Zoar, and the angel granted this request, waiting until Lot entered Zoar before raining brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And the cities of the plain were overthrown, but Lot's wife looked back from behind him and became a pillar of salt. Abraham, looking from afar, saw the smoke of the country rising like the smoke of a furnace. Abraham was comforted that Lot was sent out of the midst of the overthrow, but Lot feared to dwell in Zoar and went up into the mountain to dwell in a cave with his 2 daughters. There the firstborn dealt wickedly, reasoning that their father was old and that they had no man to preserve his seed. They made their father drink wine and lay with him on consecutive nights, and he did not perceive when they lay down nor when they arose. Thus both daughters were with child by their father, bearing sons named Moab and Benami, the fathers of the Moabites and the Ammonites. And Abraham journeyed south to Gerar and sojourned there, again declaring of Sarah, "She is my sister." Abimelech, the king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to him in a dream by night, warning, "Behold, you have taken a woman who is not your own, for she is Abraham's wife." The king, having not come near her, pleaded his innocence, saying, "Lord, will you also slay a righteous nation?" For he had acted in the integrity of his heart. And God acknowledged this integrity, revealing that he himself had withheld Abimelech from sinning, but commanded him to restore the man's wife, for he was a prophet who would pray for him that he might live. Abimelech rose early, and his servants were very afraid. Calling Abraham, the king demanded, "What did you see that you have done this thing?" And Abraham answered that he thought assuredly the fear of God was not in that place, and that they would slay him for his wife's sake. He further explained that she was indeed his sister, the daughter of his father, but not his mother, and that when God caused him to wander from his father's house, they had agreed that she would show this kindness to him in every place they came. Then Abimelech took 1,000 pieces of silver, sheep, oxen, and servants, and gave them to Abraham, restoring Sarah and offering his land to dwell where it pleased them. To Sarah he declared he had given her brother 1,000 pieces of silver, saying, Behold, he shall give to you a covering of the eyes, and it shall be a token to all that you may not be taken again. So Abraham prayed to God, and the Lord healed Abimelech, his wife, and his maidservants, that they might bear children. For because of Sarah, the Lord had previously fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech. The Lord visited Sarah as he had spoken, and she conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which the angels had spoken. Abraham called his name Isaac, and circumcised him at 8 days old. And Sarah said, God has made me to rejoice, and all that know me will rejoice with me. But the child grew, and the day he was weaned, Abraham made a great feast. Yet when Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian playing with Isaac, she was troubled, and said to Abraham, Throw out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be an heir with my son Isaac. The thing was very grievous to Abraham, but God said to him, Do not let it be grievous in your sight. In all that Sarah has said, listen to her voice, for in Isaac shall your posterity be called. So Abraham rose early, gave Hagar bread and a bottle of water, and sent her away. She wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba until the water was spent, and she threw the child under a shrub and wept, that she might not see his death. But God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of the Lord called to Hagar, saying, Do not fear, for I will make of him a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And God was with the lad as he grew and became an archer in the wilderness. At that time Abimelech and Phicol, the captain of his host, spoke to Abraham, saying, God is with you in all that you do. Swear to me that you will not deal falsely with me. Abraham swore, but he reproved Abimelech because of a well of water which his servants had violently taken. Abimelech claimed he did not know it. Then Abraham took sheep and oxen and made a covenant with him, and he set 7 ewe lambs by themselves as a witness that he had dug this well. Therefore he called that place Beersheba, because they both swore. And Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba and worshipped the everlasting God. After these things God did test Abraham, commanding him to take his son, his only Isaac, whom he loved, and offer him for a burnt offering in the land of Moriah. Abraham rose early, saddled his donkey, and took 2 young men and Isaac, and on the 3rd day he saw the place afar off. Leaving the young men behind, Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac's back while he carried the fire and the knife. As both of them went together, Isaac asked, My father, behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb? And Abraham answered, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built an altar, laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, laying him on the altar on the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him out of heaven, saying, Abraham, Abraham, do not lay your hand on the lad, neither do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only Isaac, from me. Then Abraham lifted up his eyes, and behold, behind a thicket there was a ram caught by his horns. And Abraham took the ram and offered him up instead of his son. He called the name of that place Jehovah-Yireh, for in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. The angel called a second time, swearing by the Lord that because Abraham had done this thing, in blessing he would bless him, and in multiplying he would multiply his posterity as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand of the seashore. And his descendants shall possess the gate of his enemies, and in all his posterity shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Sarah lived 127 years, and she died in Kirjath Arba, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for his wife who was dead. Standing up from before his dead, he spoke to the sons of Heth, acknowledging himself as a stranger and a sojourner among them, yet asking for the possession of a burying place. The children of Heth answered him with great respect, calling him a mighty prince among them. and offering the choicest of their sepulchres freely, that he might bury his dead. Abraham bowed himself to the people of the land and communed with them, asking them to entreat Ephron the son of Zohar for the cave of Machpelah at the end of his field. He offered to pay the full price in money for the possession. Ephron the Hittite, sitting among the people at the city gate, offered to give the field and the cave freely in the presence of his people. But Abraham insisted on paying, and Ephron named the price. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between me and you? Abraham listened and weighed out the silver which was current with the merchant. Thus the field of Ephron and Machpelah, which was before Mamre, including the cave and all the trees within the borders round about, was made sure to Abraham for a possession in the presence of the children of Heth. After this deed was done, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah. This purchase marked the first piece of the land of Canaan that legally belonged to Abraham, made sure to him for possession of a burying place by the sons of Heth. It's that time again when we talk about the Endnote references and Easter eggs. Let's go ahead and start with page 1. I've always had a theory in connection to D&C 110 that one of the three angels who came to Abraham was Elias, since he was mentioned as committing the dispensation of the gospel of Abraham. The other two messengers could have been his counselors, perhaps. Fun to think about in a way that makes sense. The JSD explicitly states that there were three angels, and not two like the KJV says, so why not? What was the significance of the Spirit pointing this small detail out to Brother Joseph, and then clarifying it shortly after that these three angels were holy men, after the order of the priesthood, if it doesn't have to do with anything? Page 4. To know in scriptural language sometimes carries sexual connotations in Hebrew. The text suggests the men of Sodom wanted to engage in homosexual behavior with the holy men. Note that Lot also would not give them his daughters in the JST. Due to the insistence of the men, the holy men pulled Lot inside and used the priesthood to smite the men of Sodom with blindness so that the door was veiled from their sight. Page 5. Many a talk has been given about Lot's wife, giving symbolic representations of what it means to look back to Sodom, including setting our hearts on the things of the world. Page 9. I used the Septuagint rendition in the first panel, which explains beforehand that Abimelech gave Abraham the silver before convicting Sarah. The JST clarifies that the covering was given as a token, not to take Sarah again. The Septuagint instead has Abimelech giving honor to Sarah's countenance, and all the women with them cautioning them to tell the truth. Page 10. In the third panel, I used the Septuagint rendition, which says that Ishmael was playing with Isaac rather than mocking him, as the Masoretic text says. This shifts the tone so that Sarah acts out of jealousy because she sees them as equals and fears Isaac losing his status as the covenant child. She doesn't see a bully in Ishmael, she sees a rival. If Ishmael and Isaac are laughing together and playing as equals, the lines of inheritance get blurred. Sarah is threatened by Ishmael's competence and connection to Abraham. She realizes that as long as Ishmael is there being a loving big brother, Isaac will never be the sole heir. Page 11. When Sarah demands the expulsion, Abraham doesn't just say, "But he's my son." He argues because Ishmael hasn't done anything wrong. This makes God's command, "Listen to her voice," much harder for Abraham. God isn't validating Sarah's anger. He is validating the prophetic necessity of the separation. The lines must be cut not because Ishmael is bad, but because Isaac must stand alone in his role. Page 14. The JST says, "Your son, your only Isaac, from me." The prophet Joseph Smith connects this Hebrew pun handily. Isaac is to laugh or to have joy. God is commanding Abraham to sacrifice his only joy. It should also be noted that in several Jewish traditions and apocryphal works, such as Jubilees and Jasher, Isaac is a grown man, ranging anywhere between 17 to 37 years of age. He went willingly to the altar. We learn from Jacob chapter 4, verse 5, that this sacrifice is in similitude of the only begotten Son. Thank you so much for everybody for listening to this week's episode of The Old Covenant. By the way, be sure to go ahead and check out my new Old Covenant Apocryverse section as well, where the story of Abraham and Isaac's sacrifice turns out a little bit differently according to some traditions. Thank you, and as always, peace be with you.